I served in Iraq and Afghanistan as an Army flight medic. And I gotta tell you, I didn't experience war from behind a keyboard, a podium, or some secured briefing room. And I saw what IEDs and bombs and bullets can do to the human body. I treated the critically wounded and the sick. I transported the dead and the dying, whether they were coalition forces, civilians, enemy combatants alike. And those of us that were fortunate enough to come home, we didn't come home untouched. We came home carrying the wounds and the ghosts of war. And many veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan remember triggers. That's incoming and outgoing mortar rounds, that's rotor blades, that's the smell of blood, fuel, burned metal, sewage, and smoke. We remember the final sounds and images of our battle buddies. We remember what grief looks like when it's still breathing. We remember the tourniquets, the panic, the tunnel vision, and the silence when the screaming stops. We remember coming home trying to fit into places and with people that had moved on. So I guess in short, we remember the wreckage of war. And that isn't the reason why I'm saying this just to brag. The reason that I'm telling you is because I am dead set on this reckless Trump war with Iran and the wider region. And that's why I can't listen to these keyboard warriors, these cable news hawks, or these same consultants and political classes that sold us our previous wars. I mean, they have the luxury of losing nothing, while those of us that have to invest lose everything. And if this war were truly about security, this administration would take the case to Congress. They would hear from the American people, they would define the end game, they would explain the costs, and then they would tell us how they're going to pay for it and who exactly would be paying for it. But they can't do that, honestly, because it's not about security. It's about power, it's about Israeli regional dominance and land grab, and it's about using American force where diplomacy should have been exhausted first and foremost, but hasn't. The American military should not be a substitute for diplomacy. It should not be used for tools for the war profiteers, the weapon contractors, and the political opportunists getting rich from trading their war stock and betting on the outcome. And most certainly, we should not be dragged into a war on behalf of a genocidal Israeli government. We already send Israel about $3.8 billion a year in military aid. And now we're being asked to give them more lives, more money, more trauma, more instability, and for what? Because when I hear people casually pushing this Iran war, I hear, amnesia. I don't hear strength. I hear people who have learned nothing from the 20 plus years of fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan. They've learned nothing about the lies, the body bags, the flag draped coffins, the poisoned water, the displaced families, the ruined cities, and the service members who have came home carrying pieces of the war in our minds and in our bones. And then you have this clown posing as a Secretary of Defense and Pete Hegseth. To me, a serious leader sounds measured, sober, and painfully aware that every sentence and decision can mean more dead troops, more dead civilians, more destroyed cities and families. And professionalism demands restraint and gravity. And of course, he is lacking in both of those areas. Possum Pete is no defender of the truth. He has publicly described this war in language like surgically and overwhelmingly and unapologetically. Even I've heard him toss around the word woke, talking about the U.S. could continue this war with Iran for as long as we need to. And my first thought is, give me a fucking break. I mean, this guy, has been removed from various positions for cause. And now he is sitting atop of should be one of the most premier agencies within our government. But who would have thought that a drunk, mediocre TV host could be so tone deaf, so performative? I don't know, maybe he thinks he can treat this war like a cable news segment or some Call of Duty podcast. Not a war where people lose lives, limbs, homes, children, parents, infrastructure, stability, and their futures. Maybe because under this current administration, accountability doesn't seem to exist. I mean, shit, Trump, was put back in office after a terrible first term, and that includes his poorly managed and deadly COVID response. Or maybe it's because some Americans are fooled by brash men who are loud and speak about war like it's some controlled burn. When truth be told, history has already proven that to be wrong. It's proven it to be wildfires, uncontrollable wildfires. And maybe some of these same people are afraid to look at their reflections of reality. The cost of living, the cost of rent, the cost of food, the cost of just breathing, the utilities. Because maybe for them, their votes can't be faced, and it's just maybe easier to be lulled into hating your fellow countrymen and immigrants. I mean, shit, after all, violence and racism are cornerstones of our foundation. So I guess Pete Hegseth is emboldened. I don't know, what can I tell you? Only thing I can tell you is I served. I saw death and destruction in ways that I never thought possible. And this is exactly why I'm saying no to this Iran war and any regional destabilization. No to this reckless blood spillage, the egos, the illusion of empire building. No to men who speak lightly of all the horrors because they never have to put their lives or their kids' lives or their significant other lives in the line of fire. And no to dragging more Americans, Iranians, and regional players into this catastrophe that we already know is costing us at least $1 billion a day, and the untold amount of lives that has been taken away. And to be honest, Donald Trump he's not accustomed to hearing no or even being stopped. That's why he keeps testing and breaking rules and laws and norms. And the people that are around him, that are voting for him, that are encouraging him, are nothing more than enablers. They are not doing it because they are fearful of him or his MAGA crowd. They're doing it because they too are being given the fruits of their spoils. They're not powerless, they are beneficiaries. They are benefiting, seems like, politically, financially, socially, and institutionally. And at some point, us sane non-MAGA Americans, we gotta coalesce together. We gotta stop underreacting to our own destruction. I mean, you can't keep treating daily chaos, corruption, and lies and lawlessness as if it's not even happening, like it's background noise, and everybody just keep talking about the the shows they watched last night, or the food that they prepared, or award ceremonies, or some other foolishness. Because eventually the bill is going to have to be paid. And if we continue to wait, there'll be, in my mind, nothing left to respond to, nothing left to fight for, to fight with. And personally, I'm already there. I'm already overtired. I've been past this administration since the first go around, since actually the elevator. But I guess the question for the American public will be, when is enough enough? When is it that you've seen too much, you pay too much, to where you will get out in the streets, or at least make your vote more present, make your thoughts and your voices more heard? Because if not, the America as we know it will eventually go away.